anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000.
We've been in the game for, like I said, over 6 years.
Is between $1,200 and $1,500 per panel. From an ad perspective, there's a couple $1,000s a month right now. Hi, my name is Mike.
And I'm Paul.
And we're with Nova Terra Energy, based out of Lansing, Michigan. So here at Nova Terra Energy, we are a broker of the solar panels. So that means that we represent multiple different installation companies. So we take the scope of the project to see if it's a ground mount, rooftop mount, are batteries needed, is it commercial, agricultural, or residential? And once we understand the scope of the project, we will then bid out the project to multiple different installers to make sure we're giving our best foot forward for the installation. So we will match our installation partner up with the residential or commercial homeowner.
We've been in the solar industry combined for around 6 years or so. This is a newer LLC. Once again, we decided to go with a brokering firm because we want to make sure that we believe in a square peg, square hole mentality, not a square peg, round hole mentality. So we want to try to match up the best fit for the homeowner. We do that by having several different companies, different vendors that will specialize in a certain need for your actual home. Before this, we've been in the solar game. We've had several different companies that we've worked for, both in management, sales, operations, ownership. We decided that we think that we could accumulate all of our knowledge that we have learned and use that to create the best practices for the industry.
Paul and I, both having worked in different solar industries and different solar companies, that's how we ended up starting this business up. We've learned through multiple different vendors that we've dealt with and our history and knowledge of the industry to start our consulting company up. With us representing multiple different brands, multiple different installation companies, we're able to provide our customers with the best fit, the best pricing, and the best solution for their solar needs.
Can you talk about what investments you had to make to start this?
So back when we started the company up, obviously with any startup business, it's extremely difficult. We had to manage our cash flow. We have to understand what our priorities are within the business. And our priorities are, number one, our clients. So starting with a client focus first, that's how we led the startup of our company. Being a client-focused business, we started out with, well, how do we find the right clientele that are a good fit? Number one is you have to have sunlight in order for solar to work. And so from our prospecting perspectives and how we find new clientele and qualified candidates is going out and getting involved in our community, involving ourselves with home trade shows and putting our face out there so we can build relationships with people to understand if they do get enough sunlight, if they do have the proper property or structure in order for solar energy to work. Because ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't have the sunlight, the solar panels aren't going to make sense. And that's our job, is to make sure that we are matching the right fit. With any startup business, it's extremely difficult. We have to be very disciplined in how we are managing the business. Some of the initial startup costs are technology, having the right software to be able to run the proper analysis, all of the data that goes into it, from the infrastructure of communication with your emails and communication, other programs that we use for our communication to make sure that we are operating as efficient as possible.
In addition to those barriers of entries for this industry, there's a couple other ones. Obviously, costs of equipment is a large barrier. Employees need to get your home inspected by your county inspector, by a master electrician, by your local utility company. All of this is ran through an application process, during which we would, if it is a grid-tied unit, we would be in full communication with your utility company. We work in a partnership with them. They would be able to give us and direct us any rules or regulations that we would need to mitigate or adjust your design, your solar array and solar design. Besides that, just like every other business, there's several other layers of barriers of entry for us. Through our years of combined business and entrepreneurship, Mike has owned an insurance company in the past. I've had a couple other businesses myself. So what we've done is taken our aggregate intelligence and just kind of combined it into what we think would be the best operating procedures, the best methods, and the best practices. And we just adapted that to the solar industry. With that, we've been in the game for, like I said, over 6 years. We've had several installs that have been happening. We are not just locally located. We install all over the entire state of Michigan and 10 other states.
Can you talk about how you got your first client?
When we first started the company up, obviously getting that first customer was extremely important. And with one of our employees, his name is Max, he's the one that prospected and found our first opportunity. It's actually up in Traverse City, Michigan, which is several hours away, but we are within our installation territory. We cover, the entire lower peninsula plus 10 other states. But that Traverse City account, when we met with this gentleman, he had a perfect south-facing roof, received a ton of sunlight, was anxious to understand the process and how the panels work. He had a neighbor that has installed the panels and really loved the system. And so he wanted to see if the system could make sense for him. So after working him through the process, running the analysis, we were able to find the right system that works best for this gentleman. After we found the appropriate installation partner for them, we put the installation into motion. After about 6 weeks, we had our first installation put onto the roof. The power was turned on, and this customer was extremely satisfied. Right off the bat, seen a reduction in his energy usage from his utility bill, and that customer is also, one of our first 5-star reviews that we had on Google.
Can you guys talk about your day-to-day operation?
So part of our day-to-day or running a potential prospect through a consultation, we will first start by looking at the consumption data. And so on your utility bill, we're able to look and see how many kilowatt hours that were used on a month-by-month basis. Once we understand kind of the kilowatt hour usage, we then determine the rate that you're being charged by the utility company. So we can see how many kilowatt hours you've used annually, right along with how much that you paid out in electricity. So we almost work the analysis backwards. So once we understand how much energy that you're currently consuming, we will then plug that data into our engineering software to see what kind of offset or production that we'd be able to do with the system. So the engineering software that we use is called Aurora. It's a very sophisticated engineering software that layers multiple layers of data sets on top of each other. So we take the local weather data, 30 years worth of weather data that we use. It's called NRAIL. It's the same weather data that the Doppler radar uses. So we understand how much snowfall and rain that we get on an annual basis and is calculated into the analysis. We then used LiDAR, which is the shading technology. With the shading satellites, we can understand how much shade that the rooftop or ground space gets. And then we also use the irradiance data. And the irradiance data is the sun satellite imagery, where we can understand exactly how much kilowatt hours, how much energy we'd be able to produce at any given rooftop space. Once we understand the consumption data, then we can understand how much we'd be able to produce by running in a simulation of those different layers of technology with the weather, shading, sunlight data. We can then understand how much offset we would be able to do with the solar system. So if we had enough available rooftop space to do a 50% offset, 60, 70% offset, then that is what we'd be looking at to offset what we're currently consuming for the utility company. From there, we will price out how many panels we're going to need, and that's how we come up with a price and an offset for the system. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're paying for the hardware. That system, the solar panels themselves, that is your little mini power plant that will generate the electricity. No different than the utility line that's coming in and feeding your current breaker box downstairs. You will now have another line from the solar that comes and feeds your breaker box. So if you have a 200 amp service in your breaker box, there will always be 200 amps of service going into that breaker box. It's just a matter of order of priority. We're going to try to take as much energy from the solar system first, and then any supplemental energy that we need to maintain that 200 amp service, we'll pull that energy from the grid itself.
We are a owner-operated company, so what that means is that Mike and I, we own and operate Nova Terra Energy. We are the sales force, the hiring crew, the HR. We have employees, but we want to really put our best face forward for the clientele. If there are any questions or concerns, when you reach out to someone from our industry or from our company, you would be contacting directly to Mike or myself. Not only is it owner operated, I'm a prior United States Marine, so we give pretty good discounts for first responders, military, teachers, local government employees. There are a lot of different options that we have for prices. We also, during our day-to-day operations, how we do it is, we first try to go and do do almost like a high-level interview with you guys. We want to dissect your bill, make sure you understand exactly what your current situation is. If solar is not an option for you, and some people it is not in the state of Michigan, there are other ways that you can reduce your electric bill. That's something that we provide as a consultation. It's not just a solar energy company. We are an energy company. So we do provide accessories, for instance, like Mike said, ground mounts. We have access to batteries. They may or may not be the best option for you at that point. This would be something we would go over with during our presentation and consultation. Electric vehicle chargers is another one in which we produce and do. If you're in a need of a new roof prior or during while you have solar, we can provide that for you as well.
Can you talk about advertising or sales? Like, how are you guys reaching out to other people? How are people finding you?
We get our leads and clientele from several different methods. We do a digital method, and we do more of a manual process, more of a ground and pound aggressive. So what we do have is we have some employees in technology that will go out and help us facilitate those needs. One of the ways that we do it is we hire people who canvas areas for us. We give them designated areas with targeted homes that we believe would be a good fit for solar, and it's their job to kind of introduce themselves to the homeowners, make the introduction, give them a little bit of information, and set an appointment. Anything beyond that would be coming from one of our upper management people. So that's one of our ways to do it. Another way that we have is call-ins. We have a very good digital marketing platform that we'll go over here in a minute, social medias and everything like that. We also do a lot of home shows. We want to be very upfront and give a good impression right off the bat. So we are very locally interjected into our community, or we're trying to be inject ourselves locally into the community by going to farmers markets, home shows, high school, football, basketball, soccer programs, just kind of sponsoring smaller type of things to get our brand out and just kind of bringing the community together a little bit more. Once that happens, because solar is very much a community thing, and that's just one way that we get some of our clients.
So one of the avenues that we obtain our leads is from our digital approach. And so we have an active presence on Google and on Facebook. And so through those channels, we allow customers to contact us. And so we have forms that customers can fill out that can explain what they're looking for, if they're just interested, if they're looking at more information, or if they're very specific that they want a 10 kilowatt size system on their roof. It allows the customer to lead the way for contacting us. And that's done on our Facebook page, also through our Google platform. Those are our primary means from a digital. We also have a Thumbtack account where peer-to-peer folks can contact us through their own local community on Thumbtack, and those have been working very well. It allows the customer to contact us on their terms, and then we essentially get our marching orders from them so we can execute and run the analysis that way.
Are you paying for ads on Facebook and Google, or are you just like having your site out there and people can search it?
It's a combination of both. We are paying for Google and Facebook leads through our ad program, as well as organic traffic. And so like on our Google Knowledge Card, we're trying to increase our phone calls and driving directions and our engagement there from a local and organic perspective. But we are also spending advertising dollars with Google and Facebook so we can pay for position when somebody searches for solar energy or solar installation. On Facebook, we're paying to have our ads pop up from a form perspective, so customers can fill out a form and they can fill out their information and tell us exactly what they're looking for. And that is on a paid and organic side, where we're running kind of multiple different options. We're trying to hit multiple different medias and multiple different, on the organic and paid advertising side of it. Our budget on our digital side of things from an ad perspective is a couple $1,000s a month right now. So we do have a decent, healthy ad spend, and it has been returning on the investment. We have been receiving some more qualified leads from Google, where it's more of a call to action. They are searching for something more specific. Facebook also has done well, but it's more of volume, but not as much qualified buyers buyers where they are interested and ready to buy here in the near future. It's more I'm planning for a couple years out or trying to learn some more information, which is also extremely valuable because ultimately if a customer or a prospect is interested in solar and it may not be the right time, it's worth it to us to educate that person, to properly educate them, and it may be a referral source for us too. If we can do a good job of educating our prospects and customers, then the referral is our bread and butter. That's our number one way that we would like to generate our leads versus having to pay for the ads and that type of traffic.
Can you go through the products that you offer and then how much, like maybe on the low end and high end, those can get to?
So from a pricing perspective with solar, a lot of it depends on the data. So how many panels are we going to need to achieve X amount of production? And so if you have total sunlight and you have absolutely no shading and it takes fewer panels to achieve that same amount of production, well, the cost of the system is going to be lower. But if you do have shading, and in order for us to, it still makes sense if you have a little bit of shading, but we would have to put an extra panel, maybe 2 or 3 panels, depending on the size of the system, in order to achieve that same amount of production, well, that's going to add to the cost of the system. So when we look at like a payback period and when did the system pay itself off and that type of thing, there are some variables in there depending on the amount of energy that we would be able to produce. But on average, the cost of a system and for a panel on a per panel basis is between $1,200 and $1,500 per panel on the average house, on the average consumption of a household with moderate to good sunlight. And so that factor will change a little bit depending on if we do a ground mount versus a rooftop mount. The ground mounts are more expensive to produce because with a rooftop mount, the structure already exists where we mount the panels to. The rooftop already exists versus on a ground mount, we have to build the structure to place the panels. And then we have to then trench a line back to your electrical box. So there's just a little bit of added cost when it comes to a ground mount versus a rooftop mount. So when we look at the cost on a per panel basis, that's why we do a consultation for every single customer, because every single customer is going to be a little bit different on the amount of sunlight that they receive, on the type of system that they want. Are batteries in the equation? Are batteries not in the equation? All of those different types of things affect the cost of the panel. One of the good things is with the reduction of cost of the panel, so over the last 10 years, the cost of the hardware of the panels itself has significantly decreased. At the same time, the efficiency of the panel has also increased. So the panels that we're using right now at this moment, we're using 400 watt panels, and they're manufactured here in the United States, in Canada, or in Norway. And really, depending on the time of ordering the equipment and with all of the supply chain issues, that really dictates in what panels that we have available and what panels that we're going to use. But we always use top tier 1 panels, which are the best quality that's out there. We pride ourselves in using the highest available equipment that we have available. From our inverter perspective, we use the Enphase IQ8s, which are top of the line micro inverters. They're also ready to go, so if a battery option is not in the cards at this time, but at a future date, those micro inverters are already set up and ready for when a battery option becomes more in your game plan.
How many panels typically is like an average house getting?
So a lot of it depends on the consumption, because the power company will not allow us to go above a certain percentage of our consumption use. So if we look at from a small consumption household to a mid household consumption usage, there'll be a range here, obviously, because every house consumes a different amount of energy, which would affect the size of the system that we would be allowed to put in. Is anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 is on average the cost of a rooftop mounted system. It can get, if you consume a lot of energy, it can be higher than that. It can be, up to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, depending on size of the house and the amount of consumption that you have. If you have a pool and a hot tub and a very large house with, air conditioning, maybe 2 air conditioners or 2 furnaces, it really all ranges and depends on your consumption versus how much we would be able to produce and the number of panels that you would essentially be buying. But that's a good ballpark on average for our customer base, is between that range for your average 1,000 to 1,400 square foot house on a average consumption for a household.
What is the percentage of solar that you can have compared to the percentage of electricity that you can have?
The power companies, they have the limitation, and because they control the process, the utility company, from right off the bat, we have to get their approval from what's called an interconnection application. And after we do the design of the system and we can understand how much energy that we would be able to produce and what kind of offset that we would be able to do, we send our design and our plans to the utility company through this interconnection application, and they're either going to approve the application, deny it, or make us redesign it because maybe we are overproducing somewhat or overproducing too much from what they would approve. And so then we have to redesign, reapply to the utility company. That is how they control the process, because they own the meter, they own the lines, they own the transformer. So ultimately they have to control the process. It's a really weird and unique dynamic with the power company because essentially they need folks to go solar. There has been legislation that's been passed that requires all utility companies to produce a certain percentage of their electricity by renewable, and they have to reach this at certain thresholds. And so the one that we're currently in right now, they have to produce 35% of their energy by renewable by the end of 2025. And so the power companies are not there yet. And so as we put panels out onto residential or commercial spaces, the power company gets to use the panels that we installed or that home or business owner now owns as part of their 35%. So because they own the lines and the infrastructure, that they need us. They need folks like us to go solar so they can reach their threshold, what they're mandated on a legislation side of things. So they control the process, they need us, but then we also become their competition, because if we are able to do a 50% offset, 70% offset, well, that is money that they're not getting, that we're able to shave off of our electric bill. We would never be able to get away from the utility company altogether. They won't allow it because they do have to maintain the lines and our grid infrastructure, that we'd never be able to separate from the utility company altogether. And that is how they control the process and, through the application process. So that's the first thing that we do. We can't get to C without getting through A and B, and that is done with the application and the site inspection. And so if Consumers Energy or DTE or whomever your local utility is, if they approve us, and then we also do the site inspection to make sure that the structural load can withstand, that the house and the roof can withstand the weight of the panels. So we have the structural side of the analysis. We also have the electrical engineering side of it to make sure that the current electrical infrastructure at the residence or building is safe, and that we can do this installation and do it properly and to code. And so if we can check both of those boxes, then those are done right off the bat after we start a process or the application process. If either one of those boxes, say the electrical infrastructure, is not good enough, well, then we walk away from the project. Or if the utility company comes in and says we need to redesign, or for any of those external third factors that are kind of out of our control, if any of those come in and derail the project, well, we'll know that right off the bat.
Do you guys have any plans on growing or expanding, or how is that done with your business?
Well, we operate here in the state of Michigan, and we operate in around 10 other states as well. We're not just locally. However, each state and each municipality has their own rules and regulations, has their own programs. So it's very important to reach out for a consultation no matter where you live. We'd be able to direct you one way or another. With that being said, some states you can produce over more. right? Some states, they cap it. Some states have different programs where you can sell your excess energy back to the grid at a higher rate than some other states. So what we do is we have a very solid relationship with the top 5 national installer, and what they do is they've given us access because we believe in operational excellence. So they found us, they tracked us down, they know our process, they believe in us. So we have access to going to several different locations all over the United States, being able to give you a good consultation about what is the best practices for your specific home. Might be solar, it might not be solar. Either way, you would know at the end of your consultation. We have employees in a couple other different states that just kind of drum up leads for us. We can give you a consultation virtually, or we can send someone over there. With that being said, right now with the technology, and the age of technology that we're in, a lot of people choose to do the virtual assessments. All that we would need for that would be your utility bill, right? Then we can dissect that and go over the next steps of the process.
Are you guys just working on expanding to more states?
So when we started this, we were in agreement that we wanted to create a company that had operational excellence across the board. And by doing so, at first, we want to know economy of scale, right? So we want to make sure that we know what we're doing. We want proof of concept to make sure it has a smooth operating process throughout the board. Now that we have narrowed that down and we've really isolated that, we're very confident in how we do our work and our consultations. So we have been able to scale faster more recently. So yes, we are. If you are looking for a job, feel free to go to our website and apply. We are scaling at an aggressive rate, and we do have opportunities for everyone.
How many installs do you plan on doing in 2023?
We would like to do at least a minimum of, a 20 installs a month, for the next year. I think that would be an easy target for us to hit. And once again, that could increase and scale as needed. It could go up or it could go down. Once again, we pride ourselves on operational excellence. So if something gets the volume gets a little bit too hairy for us and we start to notice a little bit of installation problems, then we would probably kind of scale it back a little bit, focus on that area, make sure that's buttoned down a lot more, then increase through that. So what we want to do is we want to be able to scale at an appropriate rate, make sure that everything is being, the expectations that we are setting are being met, then hopefully exceeded. Once we do that, and we have been doing that, then growth is obviously an option for us. We like to be very aggressive with our growth, but we want to be able to still maintain a level of management and cooperation that would be able to make sure that we can keep the brand at the level that we would like it.
So as we continue to expand and diversify into different states, part of our strategy and how we're going to be prospecting and developing leads and relationships in other states is through the data from other states. So each utility company, they charge different rates per kilowatt hour. And so the research of what we're doing, we're researching the different utility companies to seeing who's charging the highest rates. Because if we're able to offset where the rates are higher, that's going to mean more savings for that potential customer. So once we kind of can identify what states have the highest utility rates, we're also then looking at the buyback, how the power companies are buying back the energy. Is it dollar for dollar? So if we overproduce $1 worth of energy, are they buying that energy back for $1? Well, in some states, we do have net metering still. Some states, it's distributed generation, where the power companies are buying the energy back at a discount and then selling it to your neighbor for full price. And so if we can identify areas in states where there's high utility rates and there's high incentives to go solar, whether it's at the federal level, state level, local municipality level, those are where we're trying to expand our footprint, because that's what's going to benefit the customers the most. And so, for instance, like a state like North Carolina, if we can get into North Carolina with their very high utility rates, with our proof of concept, with our digital ads, we can now locally target customers and potential customers in the South Carolina area within that footprint that we would like to install in, and ramp up our Google ad spend. So with us spending a couple $1,000s a month, and are going to be increasing that amount over time in these targeted areas as we expand our footprint across the United States. So that's kind of our strategy behind some of our targeted growth and doing our consultations remotely, digitally, and through our experience of vetting and providing the right type of installation partner in those different areas where customers need it the most.
Do you get paid during your consulting? Do you get paid to consult, or are you getting paid after an installation is done and you're getting a percentage from that company installation?
So we are compensated on a percentage basis after the installation happens. And so for the consultations, we are not compensated for the consultations. That's our job, is to qualify the prospects up front to see if they would even be a good candidate or a good fit for solar energy. And so for us, once we do find a qualified candidate, it is up to us to communicate and work with the customer to make sure that the project does get to the roof and that we do get through installation. That is, we are incentivized for that. That is our job and our role within it. And so after we do partner with a prospect and an installation company, our job isn't done. We are there communicating with that homeowner, whether it be an issue on the interconnection with the utility company or the financing, if they need a proof of home ownership, or just any of the little details that come along the way. We are their main point of contact, and we pride ourselves in that customer service, because if the job does not get to the roof and we do not do our job and do a good job to make sure this installation happens, it is in our best interest and our best customers' interest to make sure that we are doing everything in our means to make sure the project gets installed.
And so how many employees do you guys have?
We are a team of 7 people that are employed through Nova Terra Energy. As Paul alluded, a couple of them are in other states where we are soliciting, and a lot of our employees are setters. They are on the commercial and residential side. They are setting appointments up for us, so they're out prospecting, building relationships with folks, and ultimately seeing if they're a good fit for solar energy. And we also have like an admin type of role also. So we're not just a 1 or 2 person operation. We are a small team that represents Nova Terra Energy.
And are they commission based or are they salary based?
It is a combination of both. So there is a base pay along with commission for generating the leads, and then the commission comes once the project is installed, because that's where we
Just like you guys.
Yeah. Yep. So the base pay does come on the front end when they're prospecting.
So we're here at one of our installs. This is going to be a 2-array, 15-panel installation. It is a 4.32 kilowatt system, and it's going to produce over 5 kilowatts of production. What they're doing right now is they're mounting the brackets and bars across the roof on the trusses. Then the next step is they're going to actually place the panels on top.
And then how much might this installation cost?
This installation was probably roughly around anywhere between, this is on the smaller end, so probably around $15,000 to $20,000, more towards the 15, I would believe. What we do, another option that we have here at Nova Terra Energy is we have a dealer program. What that is it's there's a large barrier of entry financially to have a solar company. So what we do is, for anyone who's an up-and-comer who would like to start their own solar company, please reach out and contact us. What we will do, we'll help you get insured, create an LLC for you, and then we can actually process your installations for you. Once that happens, then you guys would receive compensation on the back end, and that would be information that we can easily find. We have financing options available and crews available.
And then do you guys have 3 tips of advice for other entrepreneurs?
Hard work is probably the number 1 trait. It's one thing that can set you apart from anybody else. Sometimes, our circumstances of where we are at are out of our control. So control what you can control, and controlling your effort and the hard work. Number 2, it's not cliche. Starting a business up is difficult. There's a lot of ups and downs. There's peaks and valleys from an emotion perspective, from a workload perspective, but just staying focused and nose to the grindstone and blocking out the outside distractions, that other people may be putting on. Why are you doing this? That type of thing, putting that shadow of doubt. And then third advice to give to an entrepreneur, to not give up. There's always going to be hurdles, and even in life, it's never easy. And so being in business is not easy. So you have to live off the little wins. So if you're starting up a company and you get 1 lead or 1 prospect or 1 sale, Build off that. Now make it 2. Now make it 3. You're not going to get to your grand vision or to your grand goals without taking little steps along the way and planning those steps, being detailed, trying to follow that plan as best as you can, and knowing that your plan can mold and change. And so if things do change, the market changes or products change or supply chain issues, things are out of your control, being ready and able to adapt for those situations.
I would highly recommend that you identify and know your market. Every entrepreneur, no matter what the idea is, thinks it's the best idea around. And it might be, but it might not be the best idea for the area that you're in. It might be a great idea in a different market. So do your research, right? Know your market. Definitely do a deep dive into that. The next is know your barriers of entry. Not all of them are financial. Everyone assumes that, you need a ton of money to open up a business. Sometimes you don't need that much money, but there are other barriers of entry. So identify what those are. It might be equipment as opposed to financing. It might be employees as opposed to equipment or financing. But if you don't have those lined up and you don't know what those barriers are for you to start, then you're not going to be able to start. The third thing is talk to a mentor at least once a week, and they don't even need to know that they are your mentor. Pick their brain. Someone who's smarter than you, someone who's dumber than you. You can learn from both. Know exactly kind of what you're looking for in the area, in your market, in your demographic. There are people out there, if you want to start a business, who will invest into you if you have no money, as long as you're willing to work. Right? Sweat equity, work ethic, like Mike was saying. That's one of the biggest barriers of entry. If you want to open a business, but you can't work, you don't know the work ethic or getting up in the morning and realizing that it's no matter what it is, it's customer service number one, then you need to prioritize and readjust.